You know the story of Noah's Ark, right? I mean, pretty much everyone does. There's a good guy, a huge boat, a flood that covers the whole world, and of course, two of every animal. It's one of the most famous stories of all time, a tale of destruction and salvation. But what if that's just the surface? The source material for this explainer suggests that hiding just beneath this familiar story is an incredible layer of intricate codes and even prophetic patterns. And they all seem to point to a much, much bigger narrative. So let's dive in and start unlocking them. Okay, so the first code we're going to look at completely flips the script on what the ark is even for. According to our source, it's not just some wooden vessel. It's a direct physical blueprint, a type, if you will, for the person of Jesus. Now, the key to unlocking this first code, it all comes down to one single Hebrew word, kofar. Now, this is the word for the kitch, the tar, used to cover the ark and make it waterproof. And in its only use as a noun for a substance, yeah, it means pitch. But, and this is a big but, the other 15 times this root word shows up in the Bible, it means atonement or ransom. So the very thing that physically covered the ark is linguistically tied to spiritual salvation. And this is where the parallels get really striking. Think about it. The ark was covered in kofar, or atonement. Jesus' blood is set to provide atonement. The ark had only one door, the only way to be saved. Jesus is quoted as saying, "I am the door." And God's invitation to Noah, "Come into the ark," sounds an awful lot like Jesus' own invitation, "Come to me." According to this view, these aren't just coincidences. They're direct and totally intentional. And the symbolism doesn't stop there. No way. It's said to be built right into the ark's very structure. Its three decks are interpreted in a couple of ways. The first is that they represent the three parts of a person: body, soul, and spirit. The second is that they stand for the three tenses of salvation: being saved from the penalty of your past sin, the power of your present sin, and one day the very presence of future sin. All right, let's keep going because this just keeps building. The next code suggests that the dates mentioned in the story aren't just random details for the record. Instead, they form this precise prophetic calendar that connects the flood to other huge events in biblical history. Okay, this is wild. The whole thing hinges on one specific date, the 17th of the Hebrew month of Nisan. So on this day, the ark finally comes to rest on Mount Ararat, which signifies the end of God's judgment. But get this, according to the source, that's not all. It's claimed this is also the very same day the Red Sea parted to save the Israelites. And then, centuries later, it's the exact date of Jesus' resurrection. We're talking three monumental acts of salvation, all happening on the very same calendar day. All right, for our next code, we're looking at the birds Noah sent out. In this interpretation, the raven and the three doves aren't just, checking to see if there's dry land. They are four symbolic messengers that represent a grand cosmic timeline. So let's just walk through this interpretation. First, you have the raven, a scavenger flying back and forth. This is seen as a symbol for Satan roaming the earth. Then comes the first dove, who can't find any place to land. This is said to parallel the Holy Spirit hovering over the waters at creation. Then, the second dove lands on an olive branch, and the source connects this to the Holy Spirit landing on Jesus, who is actually called the branch in Old Testament prophecy. And finally, the third dove, which doesn't return, is said to symbolize the Holy Spirit coming to permanently live inside believers at Pentecost. Okay, so our final key isn't hidden in some ancient word or a special date. It's just a number. But it's a number that, according to the source, frames this entire event as a massive reset for all of humanity. And that number is 8. 8 people. You've got Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, and their 3 wives. That's it. 8 souls saved on the ark to repopulate the entire planet. So why is that number so significant? Well, because in this analysis of biblical numerology, the number 8 consistently pops up to signify a new beginning, right? A 7-day week ends, and the 8th day is the start of a brand new week. So in this view, the 8 survivors literally represent humanity's new beginning. But wait, there's another layer to this. The New Testament actually calls Noah the 8th person. Which, sounds kind of weird, right? Because he was the 10th patriarch from Adam. Well, the source suggests there's a separate spiritual lineage. It argues that because of some early deaths and another patriarch being taken away by God, Noah was technically the 8th person to inherit the specific spiritual leadership role, which just reinforces his position as the leader of a brand new era. Okay, now this is where things get really mind-blowing. It's based on something called gematria. That's the practice of giving numerical values to Hebrew letters. So, the very first verse of the Bible, Genesis 1:1, has a total gematria value of 2701. Now, here is the incredible part. The verse that marks the end of the flood, Genesis 8:14, has a gematria value of, you guessed it, exactly 2701. So let's break that down, because this is the really cool part. You have this perfect symmetry. The verse for the original creation has 7 words, and 7 is the number for completion. The verse for the new beginning after the flood has 8 words, the number for a new start. Yet both of these verses share the identical numerical signature, tying the world's first beginning to its second. It's incredible. So what does it all mean? What does all this layered meaning point to? Well, the source material concludes with what it presents as the most profound code of all, one that's been hiding in plain sight this whole time. If you take the first 10 names in the genealogy, from Adam all the way to Noah, and you translate their original Hebrew meanings in order, they form a single coherent sentence. And that sentence reads, "Man is appointed mortal sorrow, but the blessed God shall come down teaching, his death shall bring the despairing rest." A hidden gospel message embedded in a simple list of names, just waiting for someone to unlock it.